So here is the orchestration. I suggest we start with the sketch. Okay, so pretty much the first step always for me is to take the fragments, in this case the motif, and put it on an instrument. And I'm using the clarinet because that's a wonderful little instrument, right? Okay, so after I got this, I will now tackle harmony already for this first phrase. So let's go to pizzicato strings. And I'm simply distributing the voices again. In the second bar, I thought let's have a little bit of contrast, and that is why I'm going to the woodwind instruments. And I'm trying to stay out of the way of the clarinet at the register, I mean. Okay, now the articulation is not great, but we will fix it. But you can see already that the woodwind instruments create that space for the line on the clarinet. So there is not really so much overlap going on in terms of register. And now I want to repeat my strings pizzicato. Here we go. Okay, and now I'm actually thinking about what to do with those guys. So first I'm gonna rewrite it to close harmony structures, and then again I'm going to find a good register or a good spot for each of those lines. So each of those woodwind lines now sounds really very natural and it flows very nicely. So next is the line on the first violins, which is my, B section, so to speak. And I also tackle harmony right away. Yeah, so that's the line, and now let's see what we can do with these two half notes. And my initial idea was to create a motor out of these three parts. So that is why you're seeing me jump between those, two adjacent notes in the vertical structures. So that is just to create a better motor for each instrument. And it sounds pretty nice, I think. So here is what this sounds like. Yeah, it's almost like pulsation in a way, and that is always a good technique. So let's see what we can do in the next bar with harmony, and I want to continue my lines, obviously. So let's listen to all of that, and here we go. Yeah, so that is okay so far, but let's change the register for the second pizzicatos. Yeah, I like this better, actually. And also the last two bars I want to double with the flute. Yeah, you can hear it. The flute already cuts through. But also let's see what we can do with the remaining harmonic parts. And you have surely recognized the little timer that is ticking on the left corner, the upper corner. That is the actual real time that it took me to compose this. So I hope you don't mind that I sped up this video just a little bit to save you some time. But still, I want to give you the whole thing here with no edits or cuts in between. And now I'm tackling the harmony part for the second line in the strings. Yeah, first I always want to find out what notes work, and then I tackle dynamics. No, that's okay. I like it, but I didn't like those slurs. Yeah, some of these things definitely fall under the category trial and error, but I think that is part of the creative process anyway. So now I want to tackle the bass to everything. And from the sketch, you still know what my root tones were. And from there, I now try to create a nice rhythmic contrasting element to what I have already, namely the pizzicato strings and the woodwind section that alternates. So that is more or less just a straight line on quarter notes, but this is not the end result. So I will adjust things from here, try to make it more interesting rhythmically, and create something like a push-pull relationship. Yeah, so this already goes in that direction, but you will see that also I play these things pretty often, because most of those decisions are actually just emotional decisions, and I wouldn't consider these right or wrong. It just depends on what you want to hear. So if you aim for more rhythmic contrast, then this is great. And if not, then this is also great, of course. Yeah, I hope you don't mind that I play these in-between results. And these actually also come directly out of the screen recording. So I only accelerated the sections in between so that I don't necessarily make you go through this whole thing in real time. But you can follow my steps and you can see how those lines evolved. So here I'm still working on the bass line. Let's actually listen to that section as well. Yeah, this also works, but I deleted it again, so I didn't like it for whatever reason. But that is part of the process. So now I switched to arco here, and I want to write some pickups, I think, so that I have a little scale tone run into my first note. It's actually not a scale tone run, it's a scaled structure from below, from the sketch. Yeah, but it sounds nice. I like it actually. And now let's see what we can do in the violas. So here I'm also trying to create a nice line, and I will play it to you. But I see that I'm not really happy with this thing yet. And now you start recognizing how much trial and error it actually is. And what I learned is that it is really beneficial to make these emotional decisions quickly. So if you like something, then keep it and move on to the next either bar or instrument. If you want to stick to the vertical relation, then that is fine. But there is really no value in dancing around for too long and listening back to the same structure for hours without getting to the next bar. Here is a bad note somewhere, and you can hear it. Yep, that one, exactly. So this will later turn into my chromatic line, I think. And now I'm figuring out those notes, like how can I make it a nice uprising line? And that is a puzzle. It really is. Now you're seeing that the B flat is in the cellos. Yeah, that one that I'm changing now. But I couldn't go to the natural B, I think, because there was the C in the first violins in the melody. And this would have created a 13. So that's why I pushed the natural B in the next bar, but now you're also seeing that this moved away. So that is this puzzle process here, where you simply put the pieces together and make a decision, and make these decisions quickly. So let's actually listen to that version. Yeah, sounds good. And funnily enough, the B, the natural B, still shows up in the cellos, but it's the last note. Anyway, so here I'm tackling the bass part, and you have recognized that the whole strings section now went to arco. So I wanted to have this consistent sound of the whole strings section, almost like they were breathing together. And that is a wonderful thing, by the way. Also, if you have a live recording session with string players, then this is a fantastic experience. And they adjust their bowing and the pressure of the bow and everything so that it almost sounds like one creature. So that is the main reason why I switched to arco in all of the instruments, not just the higher strings. Although it would have worked if I kept the pizzicato in the double basses. But that is a personal choice, or an artistic choice. But here also you're seeing a nice chromatic line. That is actually the line that I meant. It's in the double basses, not the cellos. And the funny part always is that with the proper context around it, it does sound very tonal, and it's all part of this harmonic world. But if you listen to the chromatic line isolated, then obviously the missing context, this is so crucial, because then it can be anything. But with this, or with these lines around it, it really sounds like, well, this all is a nice chord progression. Yeah, the flute already indicates my ending that I had in mind. So this goes up with these triplets. And now it's all about the woodwind section and how this accompanies the last bars. And I'm double checking a lot of things here. Yeah, actually doubling the bassoons with the cellos, I think. That is a nice combination, and I do this very often because they complement each other in sound very nicely. Okay, so now let's actually see what we can do in terms of decoration. And that is the moment where I bring in the celesta, and this is just playing more or less the triads. Here I'm using a substitute tone actually, but still it is, 3 parts, so just a triadic structure. And also the harp is great for decoration, and I'm using some glissandi. And this is all based on the C Ionian scale. So if you don't make any changes to your key, then your notation software will usually just go to the white keys of the piano. And that is exactly what we will be hearing. So let's have a listen. I could have gone to a repeat actually in the celesta. You're seeing that I'm using a substitute tone, and that is scale tone 2 for 3. It's out of focus for now because I'm tackling the harp, but this is all done for variation. And now I want to add some shimmer on top. That is why the Glockenspiel comes in. And I will also change the line a few times here. First I thought, let's double the rhythm. And this is a good idea. In the end, it was not. So I will end up just putting in some accents on the higher frequencies. And we will listen to this in around 10 seconds here. But still, you see that I'm, just tinkering on decoration now. That is all this magical layer that I want to add to the woodwinds and strings. And it just depends how much of an instrument you want to hear. So that is exactly like finding the right dose of your spice. And I don't want to make it too bright, actually. So that is why I thought, okay, the Glockenspiel is nice, the harp is great, but let's not have this in every bar, because this easily overshadows the other sections at one point. Here I really liked the high accents on the Glockenspiel, so that is why I want to have them appear rhythmically. Yeah, so that actually is okay already. But now let's also see what we can do in the last two bars and how decoration and harmony all comes together. So here I'm still changing some of the notes on the Glockenspiel, and I continue writing out the part until the end. So I will most likely give an accent with the Glockenspiel at the end. But here now I'm fine-tuning the harp a little bit. And I want to have a scale tone run here. That is why you are seeing me put in this 7 tablet thing. So therefore, I'm just writing it in reverse because I knew that I wanted to end up on the whole, or the half note rather. And now let's see what feels missing, because that is the point now. I think none of these decisions here are right or wrong. Like, it only depends what spots in the orchestration you think could be brightened up a little bit, or maybe need some help in terms of a spotlight, an additional spotlight. And I would think visually here, for sure. That makes the whole process way easier for me, at least, if I think in terms of a stage and the instruments being on the stage, then I just want to guide the attention of the audience so that it's not all done randomly, right? So the audience is kind of on its own. I don't like this, actually. I want to guide the audience. So that is also why you're seeing me add in some blurred lines on the celesta. That is this tremolo. And you won't really hear it unless I remove it. And that is the interesting thing as well. So this, to me, adds an emotional layer. And that is way more important than the actual tones. Although I'm using triads here. And I try to stick to the sketch as best as possible, because I don't want to, this section to stick out in a dissonant way. That would not be the idea at all. And now I'm trying to use the harp a bit more, but also I want to keep it in the background as a supporting instrument. Because what you will be hearing is the run into the next bar. But these quarter notes and half notes, they almost disappear in the background. Unless you remove them, then you realize that there's something missing. And that is always the important thing. So that sounds nice already, I think. So let's just continue and let's push through until the end with decoration and making this all a bit rounder. So here again, same idea. I want to just play into my final thing together with the flute, so that the flute sounds a bit more magical. So I'm adjusting the notes here, and this looks to me like it came from the scale structure, but then I change it back and more or less stick to a plain triad. And I think that is also what I have on the flutes anyway. So that is the celesta, also just giving an accent at around the end. And now let's tackle the woodwind section, or first actually the strings. And I want to go back to pizzicato to give it a light ending. So that is also a good idea, to have a little bit of time for the players to get rid of the bow. So these pauses, they come in very handy, especially if you want to change the articulation from arco to pizzicato or back. And here again, that is my scaled structure. That is why I'm color coding it with the blue color. And I think we are pretty close to listening to this thing. Yeah, so that's a nice little orchestration. And the next step now would be to use the graphical MIDI tools. And I want to adjust the MIDI lanes or MIDI CCs so that I can control the dynamics and the performance. But that's going to be a rather boring section, so that is why I skipped this in the recording. However, I hope you liked this orchestration, and I hope that it was entertaining. So many thanks for watching.